What's up, everyone? My name is Anthony, and I'm here today with Professor Travis Tooke. Each month, we choose a theme. This month, we're talking about perseverance, and I'm so excited to sit across from Professor Travis and have this conversation. When we were talking about having this conversation, the first thing that popped into my head is, okay, well, what is the definition of perseverance? And I did look it up, and I didn't prep you on that. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, in your head, what is the definition of perseverance?
Well, when we think about this word, I think when we imagine perseverance, it's overcoming the struggles and the hardships while pursuing a particular goal, and it's such a great idea and such a great word. And when we think about it, we imagine our lives. We really only imagine the easy parts, like I'm working hard consistently, achieving these little milestones and working toward a goal. And what we're really talking about there is consistency, and that's a little bit different than perseverance. Consistency is just showing up time and time again. And that's I talk about all the time, the most important thing in becoming a black belt is being consistent. But persevering is when you get sidelined by life, right? And this is something we usually can't quite plan for because it's unexpected and we don't know how or when it's going to happen to us. And so if we take jiu-jitsu, for example, I can be consistently training every day, learning the techniques, making improvements, getting tapped out, coming back again, fixing things. And then I'm, riding my bike, I fall off and I sprain my shoulder, and now I'm off the mat. Okay, and that's where reality comes in. Are you going to persevere through this unexpected, downside of your training? So what matters there is how you reevaluate your situation when you are still pursuing a worthwhile goal. And so what I would say in that situation is like, well, what can you do? Not, why is this so unfair? What I can do is, let's say I can't quite train the techniques right now because I fell off my bike, I hurt my shoulder, but I can still exercise, I can work out my legs, I can still go to the school, I can still study, I can engage with my teammates, I can probably practice some things. The choice that many people make is to allow their situation to get the better of them, feel sorry for ourselves, and then just not go to practice, right? So perseverance is really, how do I reevaluate my goals as I get dragged out of alignment? How do I bring myself back and still continue to move forward through the unexpected?
I was a little underwhelmed when I looked into the definition. Like I said, I didn't prep you on that. But the one aspect that was reinforced with each definition, no matter where I was looking, was that overcoming of obstacles. And when I think about having the conversation with the class, it's sometimes a conversation that I first have with myself. I'm like, okay, well, in what aspects is this theme, this topic, reflected in my own life? And I will say I had a little bit of difficulty with pointing to a particular moment that I had the conversation where, okay, right now I'm going to persevere. And I imagine it's something similar for you, where you don't necessarily choose in a specific moment at a specific time, okay, now I'm going to turn on the perseverance button. But I can point to plenty of timelines that I've gone through where, there was plenty of struggle in that, but it was never a consideration of mine where it's like, okay, right now I need to persevere. It's more of a mentality that you take on where the end goal is something worthwhile. And despite any deviations from the path, you continue toward that goal. Our friend Robbie is notorious for his saying that the journey is the reward. And I heard it for so long, and it's something that resonates now when I think about this idea of perseverance. Is truly, I've arrived at a lot of different points in my life, but the value that I received was in the progression of that goal. Is there a particular, let's big picture, is there a particular goal that you can think of, or that you think of immediately when the idea of perseverance comes to mind? And then specific to that goal, is there an obstacle that comes to mind or is at the forefront for that specific goal?
Well, yeah, I was lucky enough to find martial arts when I was pretty young. I was around 15, 16, and it was the first time in my life, even though it was a short life at that time, that I really wanted to do. Like, I knew what I wanted. It was like a clarity of vision. This is what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to do it. Don't have the money or education, but I'm going to pursue this with, all my effort. And I was very fortunate. I had the opportunity to, move to Brazil, live there, and I already had the plan set up to start my first school in my dad's garage, which is exactly what happened, right? And humble beginnings, but still more than what a lot of people have. So I had that, and then right when I came back and I started teaching, I had the most severe injury of my life. I was at my peak physical, shape, young, just got my black belt, and had all these ambitions of like competing while running the school and just living that lifestyle. And it was really ripped out from under me when I had a disc herniation, and it was from an old injury, but it just finally caught up to me. And it was so debilitating. Like I'm almost 45, and my health was so much worse when I was 23 because of this injury. And just to give you an example, I'm going to stand. My range of motion was this. So like drinking water from water fountain was not possible. Had to go into this weird lunge position. Everything hurt. Driving hurt. Sneezing was a nightmare. And to top it off, I had just started the school. I had like maybe 12 students that were, just in my dad's garage. And now I don't know what I'm going to do, right? Because I was like, I don't know how I'm going to pursue this. And also I was consumed with kind of this emotional devastation of like, is this my new life? Am I going to just always be injured and not be able to pursue this? And so what really got me out of that, the perseverance part of that, is that I became educated on how to overcome this new challenge. Because I didn't know anything about the injury. I didn't know how it would get better. I saw 3 surgeons. 2 of them said, get the surgery. That's one of the worst herniations I've ever seen. And then the third guy was, I'll never forget, I was very grateful to this surgeon. He was a judo black belt. He had his own herniated disc in his back that he didn't get surgery on. And he's a surgeon. So I know the integrity was there when he told me, I don't think you should have the surgery. And I was like, why? He's like, well, he goes, you don't have like numbness, the signal's still getting from your brain to your leg. You just have this, this pain, and you can manage it and you can deal with it. And even though the pain was intense, he was right. And so I just started doing all the rehab that I could do to get better. And anyway, long story short, I did get better. It took a while. But during that time, I was still engaging in the process of learning the business and keeping my body healthy, teaching 2 classes a day, 5 days a week, and then 1 on Saturday. Still had no money or no education, but I was becoming educated, which is really, there's no substitute for that, because the more you know, the more tools you have at your disposal. It's no different than jiu-jitsu. If you understand and know more technique, you're going to be more successful on the mat. And even though that was a kind of a dark time for me, I would never trade it. I would have not traded that, for an easier path, because, 2 things that happened. I really poured into my understanding about my physical health, and I still use a lot of that information today. And my jiu-jitsu, ironically, got better from it, because I was limited in my use of my body. I couldn't like invert, inverting means like you laying on your back, legs over your head. I couldn't do any of that. So I had to play a very fundamental pressure-based game that molded the style I play today, which I'm very, very happy I went through that challenge. But I'd be lying if I didn't say like, this sucks, this is unfair, and I just want to quit, because I had plenty of those moments. And I really think getting around, people that can help you. So like Dr. Lou, he was an asset, a huge asset to me back then, and helped me recover. And we kind of bartered some jiu-jitsu for rehab. And just realizing that if something isn't so bad that it completely destroys your goal, you can come back to it. You may have to take a different path. You may have to find a different way of doing it. I think all of life is like that. You have a goal. A goal is just like a scope that you're aiming toward, but it never looks the way you imagine. You're always going to, get bumped, off to the side. You're always going to have to adjust. And a lot of times along the way, it starts to, your goal evolves a little differently as you grow and get older. That's okay. That's very different than just abandoning your goal because it's too challenging, right? You don't grow, if you just abandon everything when it starts to get difficult.
So, just hearing you talk about it, and I've heard the story before, so it's nice to hear it again. Again, a lot of I love having these conversations with the classes because my own personal development a lot of times happens alongside whatever the theme that we're talking about. And just thinking on perseverance, I guess a question that I have for myself that I would pose to you too is, how do you decide, or what makes something worth persevering through, or what makes a goal worth persevering for? For me, what pops into my head right away is just it has to be worthwhile. Mm-hmm. But then you have to define that for yourself. So I would have to say that it's individual specific. But then I would want to say that there are certain things that I would consider worthwhile for anyone. Right?
Yeah.
The pursuit of self-improvement, right? And it's hard for me to boil it down to any one thing, but if I were to say anything is, does this improve your life? Does this improve the lives of those around you? And it's again hard for me to point to one specific thing, but I'm curious for you I'm not sure if you ever even consider it in these terms, but is there a deciding factor, or how do you make that decision to persevere?
Well, you ask yourself a few questions. For one, do you love the potential outcome, right? It's so, let's say achieving a black belt. Some people are not always in love with martial arts right in the beginning. This is hard. This is challenging. I'm frustrated. I'm having trouble, with this. But I do love being here. I do enjoy the people I train with, the friends, the connections. And it feels great to build skill. And if it's a skill you're interested in, then it's probably worth the pursuit. And I say this, and I'll come back to martial arts in a moment, but I really believe that any hobby or skill or something that gives you a feeling of joy or love and you're connected to it, you should do it whether or not it pays you or it brings any, great recognition. Example would be like if you played a musical instrument or you were into painting or some hobby when you were younger, and then you stopped doing it because you got older. Just because you got older. It's like, well, that's not my job. In school you do those things, but now I'm an adult, so I have to get a job and I have to do that. I loved, playing guitar, but I don't do it anymore because I'm a grown-up. And I just think that's kind of a tragedy in life, is that we leave things that we think are not monetarily valuable, or I'm not doing it for some better reason other than it brings me a sense of growth. But all you gotta do is dig a little bit deeper and realize that no, you're pursuing a goal, your brain is growing, you're active, you are using your time wisely because of this pursuit of the goal. So I guess for your question was how do you decide? Part of it is instinct. Part of it is just going with your gut. I want to do this. Then ask some challenging questions to yourself, right? So am I being, too selfish with this? Am I taking away from my child's college fund by pursuing this? Maybe you don't, go too far with it. But is this bringing me a sense of joy without, taking away from others? And am I growing as I pursue, this? So with martial arts, and of course we're biased, so we'll always say 100% yes. Maybe not 100% of the people that do martial arts, it is the very best choice in their life all the time. But I do think 95 to 99%, it is going to be something that when they reach particular milestone, blue belt kind of being a big one if we're talking jiu-jitsu, black belt being a very long-term goal. It goes back to what we said. These people, you, me, everyone who's reached that level, would not trade it for $10 million. If you said, okay, $10 million, give me your black belt, give me all your friendships, give me all your everything that has come as a part of this journey, all the perseverance, everything you've had to struggle to reach this. I'll give you $10 million, but you have to, it all goes away. All the memories, everything. And no one would do it, right? So part of deciding whether a goal is worth pursuing is, it's kind of a practice in meditation. It's like seeing this big picture. And it's a bit opaque because you don't know exactly what it looks like, but you know what you look like wearing a black belt, and you can visualize the emotional connection to that moment, right? And so I think that's where you kind of do it. You sit with the idea long enough, and if you're not sure, talk with the people that you care about. I mean, talk with your friends and family, your coaches. I always say this to students, like, hey, talk to us. We want to know your goals. We want to know like what it is you're pursuing, and not just in martial arts, like can share other parts of it, because we have to build our lives around a lot of different goals. We have family, friends, we have other pursuits, and martial arts being one of them. So, but I do know after all these years, there's no one that I've ever met who's reached blue belt or higher that would say like, I wish I did something different, instead of that, right? So,
no, I picked up on one thing that you said, and it stood out to me because I related to this idea of like having to have a very honest conversation with yourself. And I think that's something that a lot of people will avoid because it's uncomfortable. Yeah. Because to decide to pursue something is also to say that other things are not worth that same level of commitment. I say that because I kind of found myself in that situation, I think like right after I graduated from high school and then towards the end of college. And those are points where your life can go a lot of different directions. Mm-hmm. And if you do the things that you're supposed to do, then the hope is that you have all of these opportunities available for you, and then you have to decide. That's the hard part. Is saying, okay, what direction do I want to commit to? And in commitment, there's vulnerability, mm-hmm. right? Because you have to have that conversation, that honest conversation. And I guess I never really connected the two in terms of perseverance. Like I didn't think prior to this conversation that perseverance was something that you had to be vulnerable to really take on. But it seems to be true. Because to commit to something is to, again, push everything else to the side. Or not everything else, but to push a lot to the side. To pursue black belt, you're committing your time and your body to something that takes, on average, like 10 years? Yeah. And there's so many different examples of that. I know we're talking a lot about martial arts, but even if we scale this down to the students that we have at the academy, the kids, mm-hmm. there are things that they have to commit to, right? And in that commitment, there are things that they're not going to be able to do. Whenever they make the commitment to black belt, when they make the commitment to be a student of ours, there are certain other things that they are not going to be able to participate in because of that. But the decision that we make is because we know what we're doing is leading us to a so much better position than we would have been otherwise. Yeah. And it's funny, like my understanding of myself and my understanding of my jiu-jitsu kind of parallel one another, because I was given all of these tools as a kid, and now as an adult I'm able to reflect back on that time. Like, man, I've benefited so much from when I say education, I don't mean like just school education, but again, all of the curriculum that I've had through Team Tooke, through martial arts, and it's so valuable because I'm still learning from things that I received when I was a kid. It's interesting because we started this conversation with me like, well, perseverance is just a thing that you do.
Yeah. Just persevere. Yeah. Well, it becomes kind of a tagline for, you can use, these words can become very cliche. Integrity, respect, discipline. It's like, and you can just like, yeah, I have those. Anybody can say it because it sounds like something you would just put on a motivational poster. But when you dig into what these words mean and how you actually use them, and really one of the more important things is like being honest. Like, am I honestly, using these tools, or am I just saying it because it sounds like the right thing to say? You said some kids, they might have to. The word, I thought of the word sacrifice. It's like you have to sacrifice something. Now, if you're sacrificing video game time, that's probably a good trade-off. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
You're working your body, you're stimulating your mind, and you're getting some of the mental stimulation you might get with video games, but you're actually getting with your body and with the social connection as well. And so that's a big part of it. And then the vulnerability part is like, being honest with yourself is one thing. You mentioned all the tools and everything you've had since you were a kid, but I'll bet you even with a lot of those advantages, you still find yourself in a position occasionally where you have to say, so I'm just going to brag on you. So you're like you're bright. You're a bright guy. Like you had the full scholarship. You're awesome martial artist, black belt, business owner, all of this. For many people, that could go to your head and think like, I've got it together. And one of the hard things to do, is to kind of step back and be like, okay, I'm actually not as good at this as I thought I was. So I'm going to, now, I think you do that already, but I just think in general, and I'll include myself in this and a lot of people, when we are pretty good in one area, we don't like to say we're not good at something else, right? And that ties into perseverance, because I remember moments when I started the business part, I was a pretty good black belt. And it's not easy to be like, I am a terrible business person. I know nothing about this field. And I really have to say that out loud so that now I can be a white belt again and persevere through this stepping stone. Because it's not enough to be good at a sport and lead a team and run a business, right? And so it's just about kind of letting your ego go and saying, okay, if I really want to persevere and get through to this next level, I have to let this part of my ego die to make room for growth. And anyway, yeah.
No, I again, just a little. It seems like every time we go back and forth, I'm kind of building on this idea, which is why we love having these conversations, and we'll have a cycle of different themes for each month. But perseverance, I guess, is one that, like you said, you get used to hearing it, and it's like, oh, it's the tagline on any poster that you walk into a dentist's office. Yeah. Persevere. But I think what stood out to me in what you just said is, to persevere is to also not settle. I appreciate all of the things that you highlighted about me, but in reality, there's pros and cons to this. In reality, I never really took a moment to bask in any accomplishment that I'd had. Right? Mm-hmm. I wish. I want to continue to work on this. I want to be able to pause and appreciate the effort.
Yeah, you're the opposite problem that most people have. Most people are like, I did good today, I'm taking a vacation. You're like, better. And I'm like, no, meet in the middle. Enjoy. You're doing good, buddy.
Well, there's value in, because the alternative is you kind of burn yourself out, right?
Yeah.
I guess.
Or you're chasing something that has no end.
Yeah.
You're like, well, if I this was my goal, but that wasn't that hard, so it must be here. And it's like, well, yeah, but don't miss the moments.
So I think with in essence, that is perseverance, right? Is to continue to pursue despite the deviations or obstacles or anything like that. But if you kind of settle, right? Like, let's say I set that goal and it's like, okay, well, I'm done.
Yeah.
And that's it. Mm. Or you do maybe the opposite, but maybe equally as bad for you, where it's like, well, I reached the goal, but there's still so much more for me to do. Let me not even think about the time and effort that went into arriving at this point.
Right.
Let me just shift that same energy to the next thing, which I think lends itself well to growth.
Yeah.
But you do that over a long enough timeline, and you really burn yourself out.
Sure.
And I'm guilty of that. I'm terribly guilty of that. So the thing for me to work on with perseverance is definitely being able to appreciate the checkpoints, right? Because I mean, exactly what you've said. The progress, the journey to that point is really where all the value is.
Right.
To arrive at that point is like the exciting. The motivation goes away very quickly.
Yeah.
And you fall to the level of your discipline. But I appreciate you having this conversation with me. I'm excited to have this conversation with all of our students. But we're gonna continue to do these, and we're excited for the next one. Well, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.